Hello, Ani. Welcome to part 1 of the Smart Notebook 11 tutorials. I'm your host, Jennifer Holub. This tutorial is brought to you by Kenjigo Entech. In this tutorial, we'll talk about how to open the program and some of the basic tools. Here's the icon for Smart Notebook 11. If you have an earlier version, for example 10 or 9, you will need to update your software, as you'll notice that there may be some errors when you're loading things or trying to open and function with the Notebook 11. So we'll double click on this icon, and the software is large, so it will take a moment to open. And here we are. You'll notice it looks a lot like your average whiteboard that you'd have in your class, like a dry erase board. And if you're familiar with Microsoft PowerPoint, you'll notice that the layout is much the same. Here we have your basic, your large display, and on the left hand side we have the miniature display, and we can add more slides here using the green plus sign. Okay, so I've just added 2 more slides. So we'll start by discussing these tools up here. If you had a whiteboard in your classroom, you'd likely have a jar with some pens and erasers and maybe even some scissors and that sort of thing. Well, I like to describe this group of tools here as your coffee mug of tools. Alright, this is your best friend, the select button. You'll notice I'll refer to that a lot during the presentation. So if it's blue like it is now, it means that is what's selected. Over here we'll start with the pens, and if I hover my mouse over top and leave it there, you'll notice that the word pens shows up. That's the same with the other features here. We have text, lines, eraser, fill, regular polygons, and shapes. Now before we get started into this, you'll notice that I'm able to do this just on my computer. But if you had your smartboard hooked up, and maybe you've seen the how to set up a smartboard tutorial that I did earlier, you'll be able to do this with your finger. Okay, so we'll start with the pens, and you'll notice that when I clicked on the pens, all of these tools popped up. So again, going back to this, now pens have shown up. And anytime that there's a black arrow like this, it means there's a drop-down menu. So we'll get started with that. So in the drop-down menu, we have different sort of pens: calligraphy pen, crayon, highlighter, creative pen, magic pen, shape recognition pen. We have the 4 default colors up here that you'll see on the smartboard tray in your classroom, and then some other options. So if I click on the black, I can write with that. Same with the red and the green and the blue, and some interesting colors like this purple. We also have dotted lines, which are very useful for young learners. You can write some letters here, and then the young learners who are just learning how to write can write over top. If you're bored of these colors, there are more options here. We have 35 more colors here. So you can do like a moss color or a teal. I don't know if, oops, I didn't select the teal properly. There we go. Turquoise, perhaps that's what that's called. And furthermore, if you're bored of those 35 colors, there are even more colors that you can get in the Define Custom Color area. So you'll see this little target. I can select perhaps this shade of purple, or maybe a little bit lighter, and I can add that to my custom colors and select OK. Now when I go into that, you'll see that it's a recent color, but also it's one of my custom colors here, and so now I can write with that purple. Okay, now let's talk about some of the other kinds of pens we have. We've got the crayon, and this actually gives the texture of a crayon. So if you really work at it, it'll start to fill in, much so in the way that, that a regular crayon would. And we have different colors of the crayon. We've got a highlighter, which highlights text. we've got a creative pen. So this gives stickers, or you can write with the stickers. There's the what I call the Jerry Garcia ink and some other stickers as well as some frost. Over here we have the magic pen. The magic pen does a few things. If you draw a circle with the magic pen, it will turn it into a spotlight, which you can drag and hover over certain parts of the presentation to draw attention to certain parts. You can also change the spotlight by making it bigger and smaller. But that takes some practice. You do need to figure out where the sweet spot is, if you will, to actually be able to expand and decrease. If you can't figure it out though, you can just simply exit that and then draw whatever size circle you need. And then you'll notice this little X gives us the option to exit out of there. Okay. We also have the shape recognition pen, which recognizes shapes. So you'll see that when I drew that triangle, it turned it into a much nicer triangle. That rectangle didn't work out so well. Let's try a circle. Ah, that's much better. Let's try that rectangle again. Great. And that's the shape recognition pen. And lastly, another thing that the magic pen does is creates a magnifier. So we can magnify things and click and drag that over different parts of the page so that students can really see different parts of the slide. And lastly, the magic pen also is erasable ink that just self-erases. So you'll see that blue mark will start to erase once I leave it for a little bit. And there we are. That's useful because let's say that you're teaching a lesson, you want to just draw attention to something quickly and you don't want that mark to be there forever. You don't have to worry about erasing it later on or remembering to erase it. It'll just do that on its own. To conclude this, we'll talk about how to erase this ink. You have several options with the eraser. You can use this eraser with your mouse, or you can also use the physical eraser on the tray of the smartboard. When I select the eraser, 3 options of sizes pop up. The small one, so I can erase precise locations, medium, and large. I'll select the small one to show you another feature. Let's say that you want to just erase ink in a certain location. You can draw a circle around and tap in the middle. Oops, that didn't work. Let's try this one. So what I'm doing is pressing down on the eraser and drawing a circle around it and then clicking in the middle. Again, that's not working. Okay, oh, there we go. So what I've done is drawn a circle around where I want to erase and clicked in the middle, and that erases everything inside the perimeter of what I was trying to erase. However, if you want to erase very quickly, you can go to the miniature display, and in the drop-down menu we have the option to clear the page or clear the ink from the page. If I clear the ink from the page, that clears all of the ink but actually leaves the shapes. So if I wanted to clear everything, I just go to clear page, and there you go. Well, please join me for part 2, where we'll get more in depth with some of the tools up here in our coffee mug of tools, and I hope this has been helpful so far.